Awesome. Myles, welcome to the podcast. How you doing?
Hey, mate. Yeah, I'm doing wicked, mate. So good to meet you properly.
So I want to kick things off, Myles, with an idea of like a bit about yourself, basically. So teach me like what you've been up to the last few years. You mentioned on email that you'd sold a business. You're also running a podcast. There's like a ton of different things to run through.
Okay.
But let's start with the fact that you're actually traveling in Asia and have been since the start of this year. Why are you guys doing that?
Well, God, there's so many things, isn't it, that lead you up to this place. But I guess the short thing is that I did a bunch of property stuff, still do some property things, investing and flipping. I think a lot of your guests have done that. I know you've done a bit of that. But alongside that property game, where you figure out it doesn't quite work all the time, I started a plumbing and heating business. So I already knew some handy stuff. I knew how to do some plumbing, but I trained and did the gas safe exams probably 10 years ago now. And then that was really just because we've been renovating and flipping properties. And I realized that I was getting my back door smashed in by two particular trades. One is the electricians and the other was the gas engineers. I was always thinking, God, these guys are charging an absolute fortune, these gas guys. And that's pretty much the only reason I went into it. And I wanted to find something that was flexible with just having children, probably had a 1-year-old when, or 0-year-old when I started doing gas. And pretty quickly, probably within 2 or 3 years, figured out, I wish I'd done this 10 years ago, because you can make a lot of money, and there's a real demand for sort of highly qualified tradesmen, especially tradesmen that can communicate and chat and have good relationships with normal customers and be kind of honest about the work they do. So that quite quickly grew into like a small business for me, and then employing a couple of people to work with me. And then getting to your question is, I started realizing that rich dad, poor dad thing, where my time is, I'm just getting paid for my time. Per hour is what we used to charge for. And even having guys working for me in that kind of business, you scale up, and the more guys you get working for you, don't double your income. And it's not a very good equation. You sort of increase your income by 20% maybe, or your profit by 20%, but you increase your stress and the amount of problems by 50% each time. Things always go wrong in this kind of gas, boiler, central heating sort of industries. So me and my wife had thought for a long time that we'd be really fun to go and travel and do that whole thing that you see on Instagram with your kids. But when that was coming along, I reached out to a friend who's a plumber in the area. He's got a much bigger company than mine, and said to him, do you want to just run my business and take the phones and take the emails while I'm away, and we'll do some kind of profit share? And very quickly, as soon as we landed in Singapore, within about 3 weeks, I'd mentally checked out of it already. But while we were there, I realized I do not want to go back to that. Bitcoin was just taking over my life the last couple of years. And I just found it very meaningless working in that grafting. It's really hard. I mean, I was on the tools a couple of days a week and then in the office a couple of days a week, but I just was not enjoying the grafting work like I did when I was a young guy. And pretty much in January, within a few weeks, we worked out a deal. And instead of pursuing a profit share, I sold the business to him and did 6 months. While I've been traveling, I had to do a little bit of keeping in touch with them because there's just things that come up. But in June was the sort of total end and final payment. So now I'm fully out. I have no contact with anyone anymore. And it's just like this huge freedom releasing moment that I felt.
Wow.
I think the stress of looking at your phone and thinking a customer's going to call you and say, that boiler you fitted 5 years ago, water's running cold. And it's Christmas Eve and you just think, oh shit. And you're at your wife's birthday and it's someone's water pouring through their ceilings. You do 200 jobs a week. A couple of them go wrong every week. It's just not because your tradesman is bad. It's just because that's what happens. And the more people you have employed, the more stress you have. And so I just feel totally free and released from that whole world. And now started the podcast for a way to connect with other people, which is amazing that we've connected over that. And I'm a sort of long time listener to your previous podcast as well. So I feel like you've taught me a lot and had a big hand in me moving into Bitcoin more aggressively over the last 4 or 5 years.
Wow. Gosh, cool, Myles. It's always so interesting because you'll learn this as you build your own podcast. You don't know who's listening. There's no information, right? It just says like, you got a view or you got to listen. and you have absolutely no idea who that person is. You get some very high level macro stats on perhaps the geography or the age or the sex or what platform they were on when they listened to it. But I really like to think of it actually as, and this is why I always encourage people to get into creating content, as like it's kind of leaving digital breadcrumbs. And actually the podcast that you reached out to me about, called the Bitcoin Advisor podcast, it's a long story and not for right now, but it's a very short podcast because I was only a member of the founding team of a company called the Bitcoin Advisor for 3 months, and I parted ways with the guys that now own that business. And so I've done a few different podcasts over the last like few years, and some of them being connected with businesses like that one, or Bitcoin Mentor. I started their podcast as well. And equally then before that, just myself, was Bitcoin with Jake.
Bitcoin with Jake.
Before that, I had
that's what I friend.
Bitcoin with Jake was what you used to listen to, was it?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, that's probably why.
Awesome.
On a building site, just in the ears, just like listening.
Really?
And then, I mean, you're in there with what Bitcoin did and Preston Pish, just be on the site, just consuming content, trying to understand Bitcoin.
Oh my gosh, Mars, cool. And so,
fanboy, from a long time.
Yeah, ago. Wow. But I've got so many questions about that. Before I use this as a way of me figuring out what's useful or not for my own podcast, but to get back to yourself, Myles, the process of so flipping properties. Let's spend a bit of time talking about that. So what does that actually mean, and how do you make money flipping properties?
Okay, so backtrack a little bit. I was actually a musician, and I made one in my late teens, early 20s, and I made a bit of money with some songs that you've never heard of, but got used for sync and adverts. So I had a little bit of passive income, and but I was not a good musician. I was moved to London in my late teens, and I thought I was good. And this is the story of my life. I think I'm good, I realise I'm not. Same with property. You meet a load of other musicians, and then you think, oh shit, these guys are really good. I'm not.
Yeah.
But somehow I managed to write some songs that did okay. Then me and my wife travelled a bit, came back. I didn't want to be a musician anymore because I knew that once I got into my late 20s, that was not going to be an option because I'm just so outpaced by all the other guys. And some of my friends have been earning reasonable money in the city, doing professional jobs, and had sort of 10, 15, 20, 30 grand saved up. Couldn't buy a house, and I was meeting up with them a bit depressed without knowing what to do, and said, why don't you guys give me your money? I know how to do some plumbing stuff, and I'll buy a flat, flip it, and we'll sell it. We'll be millionaires, And I did that a couple of times, and I was actually on that awful program, Homes Under the Hammer, and it was really fun. Oh my gosh, man! When you look back at it, I was so cocky. I was like 26 or something, acting like a big boy property developer with a 1-bedroom flat in East London. But the way we made money is buy the flat and renovate it, do it up, and then sell it for more than you bought it for, right?
Yeah.
Which everybody and their auntie, when we used to go look at properties, you realise you're not just competing with property developers, you're competing with someone who's got an average job in London, and they're trying to allocate their capital somewhere else. The competition is so high. I did that, like 6 or 7 times, and made money sometimes just about break even. I never worked out my hourly rate because I knew that it was not good if I figured out how much time I spent on it. And that was around the time when I decided to be a plumber, because I need to create this income all the time and do the property as lump sums coming out of the good property deals. But I think what I realised, what I look back now on, is that some of the properties that we bought and would then sell on would take such a long time to sell that the amount of money we made in 1 year, we could have made in 18 months if we rented it out as a rental property. And so we then moved into doing more buy-to-lets, and I've got a couple of buy-to-let properties still. But I guess one question for you is, I don't think flipping properties is really a good business anymore unless you are doing it at scale and you're kind of knocking a house down, or you're buying a house and you're converting it into 5 flats or a property into 5. Then you're really adding a lot of value. But I think what I was doing is just playing in a rising market and putting a nice bathroom in and a small extension or a loft conversion, which adds a bit of value, but a lot of that profit is taken out by the wages of the people working on your renovations. But buy-to-lets have been good for me. and creates that sort of rich dad, poor dad income that I couldn't have when I wasn't a plumber. Like, I wasn't working, I wasn't making money. So in that way, we've achieved some kind of financial freedom with buy-to-lets. But I wish I just bought Bitcoin instead, because it'd been a lot easier. And I wonder whether now, is that still a play that you do? You decide to sell down properties and go move into Bitcoin, even if it's 120K? Or, I don't know.
Great question. Well, first of all, I love hearing these stories, because I think that there is no one better at investing than yourself. And the only way to learn how to do it is to fuck it up. As stupid as that is. Like,
I definitely have done that.
Why is flipping properties a bad idea? And, as you said, like, everyone and their bloody auntie's got the same idea. And, because it's a sure bet. It's a sure bet, isn't it? My strong opinion now is that unless I was to own, I don't own any physical real estate right now, to be very clear about that. If I was, I would want to own a primary residence that is a family home, which is in some ways an emotional investment just as much as a financial. If I had the opportunity to purchase any kind of investment property, it would just be a flat out no. And that's mainly because I'm really just looking at purchasing power. And it's like, okay, what's the best risk reward purchasing power bet you can make? And I haven't yet seen anything better than Bitcoin. Now, you could take more speculative bet and give away the superpower that is self-custody and have a crack at some of these Bitcoin treasury companies, or even some like scammy altcoin, or bet on the horses. I don't care. There's probably ways to outpace Bitcoin. But real estate investing, I got my hands burnt so badly. I had 2 apartments in London, both of them lost a ton of money, and the market went against me. 8 years I held Kensington and Chelsea, and I lost at 20%, 25% under the market. It was painful.
Yeah.
And I put in an extra bathroom, and I was like, I'm developing, And it's like, no, mate. Yeah. The average price per square meter between 2014 and 2022, it was off 18, 19%. So what are you going to do about it? Okay. Like, you either want to get your money out or you don't. And so I had to stick or twist. And thankfully, I was like, well, I just know that this thing, Bitcoin, is such a big deal that I have to get my money out regardless of the cost. So I took a 50% equity haircut across both. But that money is now 4, 5, 6x in self-custody. So was it worth it? Yeah. Yes, absolutely.
I just recorded an episode for my own podcast talking about the worst investment I've ever made. And I'll send it to you, because you'll probably find it funny and just totally agree with so many things. But I bought a house for my brother-in-law, a flat for my brother-in-law, and everything about it was wrong. We lost money. The tenant did a shit on the floor in the middle of the flat after we evicted him, and I had to clean it up, giving the story away. And I felt so bad that I allocated this capital to my brother-in-law, because I was so cocky and thought I was such a big boy property developer, because I flipped a couple of flats and sold them and made money. I did not understand the market, and that actually I wasn't doing anything. I was just riding a rising market in the sort of early to mid 2000s. And the phrase "safe as houses" is not a good phrase. It should be banned, because it gives the wrong impression, particularly in a place like the UK, Australia, or America, where property is so prized as an investment and idolized. It's almost propaganda. How much people are desperate to get rental properties. But I think I'm moving definitely to just figuring out, when we get back to the UK, selling some of the rental properties, going into Bitcoin fully, paying some tax, and just taking a hit like you did, really, because I don't want to have to travel.
Well, this is the thing. So my encouragement to you, Myles, would be, and this is the same for absolutely anyone, is ask yourself the question, why do I own what I own? And you need to put together a statement of assets and be like, okay, this is everything I own. These are all my liabilities. Minus that off. Okay, there's my net wealth, whatever that figure might be.
Yeah.
Of the stack of shit that you own, why do you own it instead of owning Bitcoin? Well, and you have to have an extraordinarily good reason to own that stuff from a financial returns perspective and from a risk perspective. And it's absolutely okay to keep things for cash flow purposes, potentially. Yeah. If you still think that you're beating the rate of real inflation, then that's okay as well. But in my mind, like holding, this is where real estate is quite effective, is leverage, because highly financialized market. So if you're able to get good debt terms and you can fix them for a long duration, then I think that's quite interesting, because then the return on capital employed is actually very good.
Yeah.
When you don't own the whole thing, someone's given you all the money to buy it, and then actually you're riding a market that's just only going one way, which is up. In that scenario, it works quite well. But yeah, I know, big question, mate. It's the opportunity cost. Even if you're in the money on those things, if you don't buy Bitcoin with the equity in those properties, it might take you a year to sell them, because the liquidity on them is tricky.
Yeah.
There might not be a buyer, simple as that. But then equally, it's like, if you see Bitcoin for what it is, well, where might it be in 5 years' time? 5 years' time is 2030. And there are some outrageous predictions for price based on today's dollars. And, you're seeing, well, anyway, we don't need to go into the bullish case right now. I'm much more interested in like your actual choices. I think that's always so cool to think through. So anything resonate from that?
I mean, I think it's hard, because I feel like in maybe 5 years ago, I was starting to get to a place where I was achieving some of my financial goals that I learned through the whole rich dad, poor dad philosophy that sort of pervades everything. If you're into sort of your capital working for you, and understanding that you shouldn't really be charging for the hour, and that you should be getting income from multiple sources. And so the problem is that I have this emotional attachment to the hard work and graft that I put in as a plumber to be able to purchase those properties. And it's like, right, I only just like coming traveling and selling the business is like the top of the mountain for me. And it's not like Silicon Valley exits at all. It's a small plumbing business, and they're little properties. It's not like big places that are making huge cash flows, but it does cover a normal person's living allowance every year. We could live on the income. We're not going to be really creating any wealth from that. It's just this kind of security blanket that I've been aiming for a long time, so I could not be a plumber anymore. So I wouldn't have to grind underneath people's toilets and kitchen sinks when I'm 65 years old. So it's that kind of mental connect. And I know what's going to happen. Bitcoin's going to hit $1 million for the bull case for Bitcoin in 5 years. And then I'll be thinking, oh my gosh, I'm so rich. Why the hell didn't I sell these properties? But it's because I've got this insecurity around, I so badly don't want to be a plumber anymore. I really, really don't want that. I think there's a certain type of person that can handle the kind of confrontation that takes place with customers, with plumbing, with invoices not being paid, constantly chasing, managing geezers as well, like proper geezers working for you. It takes a certain type of person, but I'm not really that guy. I just got into it because I thought this seems like a good gig. I can be flexible and be with children, and can still make some decent money. And so I so don't want to go back to that I'm scared of selling the rental properties, forgoing the income for 4 or 5 years. I don't know. That's kind of my predicament, really.
Yeah, no, fair enough. And so would it be fair to say then that as it stands right now, of your net assets, the percentage allocation is largely physical real estate?
No, still not.
So, obviously you don't want to talk through figures.
No.
So
no, I mean,
without aware of mentioning that online, but
yeah, I mean, without doxing myself,
is everything you own, is it like 50% of it's real estate, or 60%?
I would say it's probably.
If I could reframe it, it's like what I'm wondering essentially is like, let's say it was 50% physical real estate right now in those houses you're talking about. If you sold the equity in those properties and you could buy Bitcoin today, even at $120,000 US, and you hold it for the next 4 years, and I mean, even in my view, we're going to see an all-time high in about 3 months, maybe 4.
Yeah.
And then we're going to grind back down through 2026, 2027. An exit point, in my mind, is in literally a couple of months' time. And an entry point back in is about 12 to 18 months away.
Okay,
I could be completely wrong, but that's how I'm looking at my Bitcoin process over the next couple of years. So I would look at taking some profits in the couple of months ahead of us. And then it's like, okay, like I have one friend, for example, who's going to completely sell out of his Bitcoin position, sit in cash for 18 months, wait for it to grind all the way back down, and then re-enter.
Okay.
Now, I'm not going to do that personally because I still just prefer the counterparty safety of Bitcoin in self-custody. But that's his philosophy. So in my mind, you could put those properties up for sale. 12 months time, you get the money out, buy into Bitcoin when we're in the next bear market, and boom, ride that capital growth wave. And another way to think it through would be, okay, so let's say you have a property that's worth 500 grand and you're making a net yield of, if you're lucky, 5%.
Yeah, I mean, you're not far off. Maybe
5%
maybe 6 at the most, but yeah.
Okay. So that cash flow is helpful because that, pays the bills whilst you're not working, quote unquote, even though you're running a property business.
Yeah, small property business.
All the time,
Yeah.
managing your properties.
Yeah.
No one ever tells you that bit in Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Yeah.
But I wonder, it's like, I don't know if you've ever heard this phrase of picking up pennies in front of a steamroller.
Mm-hmm.
So people out there will say, okay, I'll take your Bitcoin into custody and I'll give you a 4% yield. So you can not sell your Bitcoin or whatever. So Bitcoin's going to go up by 5 or 6x. It's going to quadruple in value, and you want me to give you my Bitcoin and I get 4% for giving it to you? Well, what's the counterparty risk? And then what we saw with previous cycles is a lot of these digital platforms blew up.
Yeah.
So with real estate, it's like, okay, so the yield is 5%. The capital growth potential at best is 10%. So the opportunity cost is 5x minus 10%.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like it's a absolutely extraordinary difference in terms of capital growth potential. So the cash flow is inconsequential in comparison to that cash flow growth, to that capital gains growth. So another approach that has worked very well for me, at least, is basically the more Bitcoin you can get and the longer you can hold it for, you can just sell it down.
Yeah.
So that same cash flow now, let's say you had 5 properties that were worth 500 grand, they're making a 5% yield. So you're making 150K a year in income from those properties. If you were to buy Bitcoin with $2.5 million, 2.5 million quid, and sit on that for the next 5-year run, that number increase is massive compared to that yield.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Mate, I'm totally with you. I'm fully with you. I'm fully with you, actually.
It's an emotional thing, isn't it?
Yeah. I think I've got PTSD from the last cycle, right? Where I didn't take any profit when it hit 70K or 69K, right? And because I think we all thought, I don't know if you follow that guy, what's he called? 100
Plan B.
trillion. Yeah. Oh, mate. He caught everyone, didn't he? He even caught
the stock to flow model.
He caught even all the cleverest investors, right? The top Bitcoin guys were assigned to that. So we were all waiting for 100K
I thought we would see 100K the previous time. Absolutely. Sure. Yeah. I was very surprised that we didn't.
Yeah, my wife was like, "You're always right, but your timing isn't." So when we hit 100K before Christmas, she was like, I told you.
When's it happening?
Yeah, I told you we were going to hit 100K. She was like, yeah, but you were wrong on the timing by 4 years. Like, okay, fine. So I think my PTSD is, I think this time round in the cycle, I would like to take some profit in Bitcoin. My trouble is, I'm a terrible trader. I'm extremely emotional, and I spent quite a long time, in my late 20s, early 30s, trying to understand trading. And I did some courses trying to do day trading, and I pretty much realized I'm not good at this. And I also think most people are not good at this. And even the top investment fund managers in the world, that whole thing around, remember that bet that Warren Buffett did against some boutique hedge fund where he said, I bet you over 5 years I'll outperform you by buying an index fund. And they said, fine, okay, pick the index fund. And I think Warren bet $1 million. And over 5 years, the index fund beat this hedge fund, and they had to pay him $1 million.
Every time.
Yeah, and the longer time you go, the closer you get to 20 years, 25 years, it trends to about 1% of hedge fund managers that actually outperform the market. And I thought, well, if they can't, how am I going to do that? And then I think that mindset flows into Bitcoin as well. I think I don't know when to sell. And I wouldn't sell my whole stack, like you're saying, because I don't want to, the risk of Bitcoin absolutely mooning is too high for me to sell everything. So I want to take some profit for sure. But I think that on the other end of keeping property and keeping that cash flow, not selling it, that property income, particularly on this trip, when we were saving for this trip, I was putting everything into Bitcoin, and I thought I'm going to have to sell that to pay for this trip. But now we've got this property income. That property income is saving me from selling my Bitcoin. There's that end as well. I'm thinking, okay, I need to, whatever I do in my work is saving me from selling my Bitcoin stack. So what's better? Do I sell a property, spend some of the capital for the next 3 years if I'm not creating a new business? But the reality is I'm probably going to start another business at some point. I'm not going to, unless this podcast blows up, we both know that. The idea really is that
it takes a long time.
Yeah, that I'm not expecting to be Joe Rogan, but I think that through the podcast, I like to create connections with other people and then gradually find out what business I'd like to work in or start a new business with someone that we meet. Because, I don't want to go back to that fiat. I'd like to move into a non-fiat world where I live on a Bitcoin standard and work in Bitcoin, even if it's not a strictly Bitcoin related business. It would like to be with people who understand Bitcoin so that we can try and move towards something which is not based on government money the whole time. I think I really feel that direction is where I'd like to go in, for sure.
From where I'm sitting, Myles, you've already made a bunch of fucking awesome decisions to actually make that happen. Like to be in Asia traveling right now, sold a business, sitting on some real estate that's worth some money, bought some Bitcoin already, figured that out. Like, I mean, all guns blazing, basically. Well done.
Yeah, I mean, it's lovely. I mean, it is like, but I what I'm aware of now is I think a few times while we've been traveling, you can go to these amazing places in this part of the world. And I'm sure you've been to some of them if you've lived in Singapore for a while. And I've been there with my wife and I just said, how are we here? Like, how have we managed to get? I'm a plumber, and really, it really is Bitcoin actually, because I think if I didn't have that Bitcoin stack, that I was just hard. Every time I'd listen to a podcast and think, oh, you listen to someone very articulate, like Michael Saylor. You listen to Michael Saylor talk. I'm on a building site, and I just look at my bank and think, I'm putting that whole stack into Bitcoin right now. And I just was aggressively moving into Bitcoin. Every time I'd hear something and think, I get these messages from my wife saying, oh my gosh, our bank is empty. So don't worry. I am actually that DJ that there are memes about where it's like bank balance, £52, Bitcoin stack going up. Luckily, it's not always, we still have plumbing jobs going on, so there'll be money coming in. But I'm so glad I did that, because I think even if I had a couple of properties creating income, I don't think we would have done this trip if I didn't have some Bitcoin. And it's not enough to retire on, but it's enough that I know where we believe Bitcoin is going, that I can travel and take time off and be with the children more. And we homeschool our children actually as well. And obviously, while we're traveling, we started in January, but we decided a few months ago, we wrote to the kids' school and said, we're not going to bring them back to school, sorry. So we don't know what we're doing next, but we're going to carry on homeschooling because, well, mate, that's a whole other podcast, isn't it? The homeschooling.
Oh, it is. I mean, that's gone straight down in my notes, Myles. One thing that I'm seeing consistently happen so I first bought Bitcoin in 2015.
Okay.
But it wasn't until 2020 that I was like, oh my God, what the fuck is this thing? And so as a kind of let's just say, I talked about this recently, where your mind goes, your money follows. And so the percentage of my day that was focused on Bitcoin in 2019 was pretty small. And by 2020, like Q4, it was like 70, 85, 90, 100%. Like, find out as much shit as you possibly can about this thing. Start creating content, meet people, what the hell's going on. And with that, then my investment portfolio started shifting. I was like, well, hang on, why do I own this? I could own Bitcoin. Why do I own this? I could own more Bitcoin. And what I've consistently seen happen since going to meetup events over the last 5 years is friends of mine in the space that have been doing exactly what you describe, which is basically leveraging their expertise as much as possible to get paid as many pounds or as euros or dollars as possible to just DCA into Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Doesn't really matter what the price is. Doesn't matter what day of the week it is. Doesn't matter if you're fixing someone's sink or if you're an accountant or if whatever the hell they've been doing. or electrician or whatever, they will literally just pump into Bitcoin. And I've got friends now, like shout out to Daz B, for example. Daz came on the show a couple of times. Him and his wife and his sons, they're traveling Australia in their caravan. They're taking a year off sabbatical, first time it's ever been possible, and it's because of Bitcoin.
Yeah.
And there's too many to name, but what it does is it's like it's a battery that, and especially as men, you want to be providers. You don't want to be like, sorry, babe, no, can't do that. So actually, yes, we can do all this stuff, and we can be comfortable and confident in saying, yes, let's do it. And hence you have to pinch yourself when you end up in hotels and exotic places going, are you sure this is okay? Like, what?
You've hit it.
Getting like they're just, people are smashing it, mate. And it's because of Bitcoin.
Yeah. And it's not that, I think people have said to me a few times, oh, is it because of Bitcoin that you're traveling? You're spending your stack, and they say, oh, seeing Bitcoin's high, you must be staying in some nice places. I mean, yes, but I'm not spending that. I just know that I can spend my fiat for sure, because the Bitcoin is growing all the time. And it gives you don't want to have too much security in your wealth. Because I kind of have this mind where I think if it all goes wrong, I've got this picture frame, which has got a spanner and a £20 note inside it. And it has the break in case of emergency on top of it that someone gave to me last year. And that in my mind is like, worst case scenario, I just go around fixing taps again. But the best case scenario is Bitcoin keeps growing and I spend fiat like it's trash responsibly. I don't want to be like wild about it, but I wouldn't have come on if we didn't have the Bitcoin there. I would be watching every pound. When my wife says, can we do that? I'd be like, well, we should probably not. We should probably try and conserve. Whereas I think, yeah, babe, it's cool. Like, Bitcoin's hit a new time high. Let's just go for it. We're not going to use it, but so it just helps, doesn't it?
You can read as much as you like, right? I mean, if you were to take all of Safedine Amoose's books and you go through the Bitcoin standard, the fiat standard, and Economics 101, it details extremely well how the Austrian School of Economics looks at sound money, how sound money is actually a discussion that's been had for a century and a half since Karl Menger, in Vienna in the late 1800s. And I'm even just reading a book at the moment called Honest Money that talks about biblical references to gold and silver and how money should be managed. And this is the Old Testament in the Bible this guy's referencing.
Yeah.
So this is an ancient discussion about the best ways to manage the money supply, etc. And Bitcoin is just the latest iteration of what that discussion is around. But it's very clear about how when you can save, your confidence on the future increases. To refer to some of Safedine's work. And what we're talking about is that in reality, because we've experienced what sound money can do for you. And that's what's so credible about it. And it's actually like, okay, I'm going to make some decisions here and see what happens. And nothing would change otherwise.
Yeah. What I really care about now, and I think as sort of Bitcoin content creators or educators, I don't know how you would describe yourself, but I think we need to start moving away from this, oh, bro, I made like 200% returns, which is a lot of the Bitcoin content guys a few years ago, which is kind of like, have fun staying poor. It's not very kind, really. It doesn't make people like Bitcoin. And I think what I'm trying to go for with my stuff is to try and relate it to the guys that I was working with or spending time with, or my friends that are in normal jobs, earning normal salaries, living well, but knowing that their parents bought a house, stonking great house on one salary 40 years ago, and they can't even afford a flat on two salaries, and they've got their kids dropped off at daycare at 3 months old, and they don't really want to do that, but they know they have no choice. I want to speak to those people and say it shouldn't be normal to work and earn your money hard for two salaries and do all that stuff, drop your kids off at daycare and that, and then in your evenings and weekends have to be an outperforming day trader beating these guys on Wall Street to make your money work twice. You shouldn't have to earn your money two times. Really, what we should be able to do is work hard, which is fun. It's interesting to do work that you enjoy, give value to an economy, give your economic energy to the people around you, which is what I felt like I was doing as a plumber. I was fixing people's problems, really, and they were very grateful when their heating was working in the winter. So you give your skills to the world, you get rewarded for that economic energy. And then you should just be able to save it for the future and not have to do all of this extra stuff, like reading thousands of books to be able to beat the market. And that's what I want people to understand about Bitcoin now is we are going to see the price go up. But besides that, you're still going to work for the next 20 years. So over those 20 years, just save your money slowly into Bitcoin and you're going to have enough there. You're probably not going to be, if you're saving a small amount every month, you're not going to be generational wealthy, but you're going to have enough for yourself to live, look after your kids, and not be in some desperate trade going up a ladder on the third floor when you're 65. I think that Bitcoin offers that kind of freedom to people, that it is actually what people imagine their savings should be. But I don't think they realize their savings aren't actually going to do that if they save in fiat.
And so, Myles, tell me, of your friends and colleagues from the industry that you were part of for, I guess, I mean, how long did you have your plumbing business for? 10 years or something?
10 years, yeah.
Yeah, there you go. So of all of the friends that you made through that time, how many of them are buying Bitcoin on the side?
Only one. And
wow.
Yeah, only one guy that I know. And he's a switched on kind of investor dude. But I've told so many people about it, like over the years, so many. And even 10 years, I've just got the screenshots from when we had Bitcoin on Coinbase 10 years ago. And I can show them, being like, guys, look, I told you about this then. Just save a little bit. Or some of the guys that work for me, I'd offer to pay them in Bitcoin. No, I'm not interested. And
really,
but I don't know how.
Myles, as I listen to you, like it makes sense that people would do that, right? It's like just keep working on what you're doing. Any disposable income that you're not spending each month, you want to save, just buy a little bit of Bitcoin each month. And trust me, you'll be totally fine. And you'll find that really that's all that a lot of these people I've met through the Bitcoin industry, meetups, etc. That's really exactly what they've done. They're just also really passionate about Bitcoin. So it takes a cycle, maybe 2 cycles, and suddenly you have like an economic base to work from that you couldn't have dreamt of previously. So that's like 4 years, maybe 8. But I think the difficulty is it's about conviction. And if in my experience, for sure, as conviction goes up, of course, your allocation goes up. But you can't increase your allocation without your conviction increasing as well. And so if people aren't actually convinced that Bitcoin is a powerful tool for them, then it's just going to fall on deaf ears every time.
Yeah.
And so one person in 10 years, isn't that crazy? I mean, I think back to my colleagues from when I was a broker. Like, I was talking about Bitcoin in 2015 on a broking desk in Singapore on like the 27th story of a building. And they'd turn around and talk to me as like the little Bitcoin guy in my 20s.
Yeah.
And they're all still working in those jobs.
Yeah, I'm sure.
They could easily, they all get paid bonuses and tons of money. If they were pumping that into Bitcoin each year, they don't need that job.
Yeah.
In 4 years,
I think it's trying to find the thing that convinces someone into Bitcoin. Like, I do actually have a friend in Singapore who I've spoken to about Bitcoin previously, and we saw him in April. And what tipped him over, you have to understand the person. Like, what is it they want? And he's moved to Singapore because he's fed up with the UK. He's done with UK politics. He's very anti-woke vibes. He's had enough of, he's that kind of guy, and a little bit older. And I said, okay, do you know this about Bitcoin? You can save in Bitcoin, and you can put it on this little hardware device, same size as this microphone, or you can memorize your wallet phrase, and then you can just cross a border, go to that place that's hospitable to Bitcoin, and you can download a wallet from the internet and type that in, bang, your Bitcoin will be there. I said, really? But how can they not stop that way? I don't see how they can right now, as long as you don't forget your seed phrase. Then that evening, we were on Kraken, and I was showing him how to buy his first Bitcoins. That was the tactic for him. But I think we've got to find the tactic. So I actually think for some of the tradesmen that I know, I probably should have gone for the tactic of you can make 1,000x in 10 years. Like, I should have gone for that tactic and just gone big. But I think I didn't around that time. It's only in the last 4 or 5 years I felt confident enough to say that to people. The first 4 or 5 years I was like, oh, I don't want to tell them to do that because I just don't understand Bitcoin enough.
Well, and buying Bitcoin today in 2025 versus 2015, it's a very, very different thing, right? 10 years ago, it was a speculative bet, at least in my mind. Like, so much has changed since then. But Myles, in my opinion, listening to you speak, the most powerful thing for anyone that works in the industry that you're from is to hear you talking. That's it.
Yeah.
In my view, because it's like, okay, well, actually now I'm not working that business. I sold it and I do this with my time.
Yeah.
I'm traveling in Asia and homeschooling my kids.
Yeah.
Like, how many of the guys on those sites that you met over the years would love to do that?
People talk about
So basically, Bitcoin's not even part of the conversation, right? You go, oh, boys, I'm actually not working for anyone else. I just homeschool the kids. And they'd be like, what the fuck?
I mean, I probably should just start saying, because I'm going to see them all around when we get back, and everyone's going to, you know, they're my mates. Some of them are my mates, and they're kind of your work friends, right? But you spend so much time with them that you see them around. I think for me, doing the podcast now was inevitable because once you realize where Bitcoin is going, I've said this lots of times, I'm sure it's not my thought. Once you realize where Bitcoin is going, you realize there's nothing else more valuable that you can spend your time on. If you sort of you look at a work perspective, I would say spending time with my children is the most important thing I can do, especially in their early years. It's the most inevitable thing. Once you realize what's coming, I just think that's what helped me exit plumbing, because once I checked out of running the business and I really I'm going to start a podcast about Bitcoin, I'm just going to talk about it for my friends. And then I started actually having some time traveling every week thinking, okay, I'm going to do a podcast about this. So I spend 3 or 4 hours, learning about the topic I was going to talk about. And then it would just be thinking, well, if what I'm saying is true, why would I go back to being a plumber anymore? I'm going to sell this business. I'm out. This is the most important thing. I'm kind of doing what we're talking about I should do with my property, with my plumbing business. So I feel like I'm doing it in steps. I've exited the plumbing business, and my parents were like, what the hell? You've been doing so well. We're so proud of you. They're very affirming. My wife's parents are like, oh, Myles, wow, plumbers really sort of have gold spanners, don't they? They go, oh, can't believe plumbers earn so much money. They all think it's so amazing. I'm like, yeah, guys, because there's no one doing plumbing. But they're like, what are you doing? You're the hope for the family. You could support everybody. We've got some vicars on my wife's side of the family. Actually, on my side of the family, my brother-in-laws will do pretty well. But my wife's side of the family, they're all in the church. So I think there's this slight thing where they're like, maybe Myles will be the one who makes absolute bank and can look after the grandchildren and the cousins. And they're like, no, don't stop being a plumber. I'm like, don't worry, guys. I found about this other thing called Bitcoin. They're like, oh, no. Yeah. But I'm all in.
But it's funny where the resistance from within your own family can come from these kind of decisions. And it's often in places you don't expect, which is really interesting. That's a story for another day, though. So we've come very naturally to talking about launching a podcast. So you have got Bitcoin for everyone.
Yeah.
And what? So I think we've pretty much summarized, but why have you started a podcast?
Actually, I'm not too dissimilar. I've had a couple of other podcasts that haven't done, that we just lost interest in. Me and my friend, the one who had bought Bitcoin, is an electrician. Me and him did one which was called Plain English Investing. That was kind of just us talking about investing in traditional assets. I think we did do one episode about Bitcoin, but it's difficult to make schedules work, and we were both busy doing our businesses. It just didn't work out. Then for the last year, the podcast I had was called AI for Everyone. And I did that consistently for 16 months. But I realized that I was a total amateur talking about something which is very professional and technical. And I would do the sort of plebs news on AI every week for 15 minutes. And then a little break from that for about 2 or 3 months before we came traveling. And I realized what I really care about is this. I care about Bitcoin. It's had the biggest impact on my life of all the financial things that I've ever been involved in. And so I think once I started, in my mind switched around to thinking, I should just talk about Bitcoin. It's the only thing I've consistently cared about for the last 12 years. And once I started learning about it more, I just thought, you know what, I don't think I'm ever going to get bored of this, because the Bitcoin rabbit hole goes down every aspect, into art, into government, into printing money, into war. You suddenly go down every historical rabbit hole through Bitcoin. And I just thought, there's no end. If I want to create a podcast interesting for other people, it has to be something I'm deeply interested in. I kind of wanted to start a podcast and wanted to create something to connect with people. And the AI thing, I don't know why I went on that, just because there was an AI hype about 2 years ago. So I did that for a bit. It was okay. But then the Bitcoin thing just started really taking over for me. The more time I spent on it, the more I had to really focus on talking about Bitcoin. And I realized that there's a never ending list of things that you can actually talk about once you get into everything that Bitcoin relates you to.
When we were teeing up this call, you asked me a couple of conversations. You asked me a couple of things about podcasting. So what were the main things?
Because we're in quite a similar situation, it sounds like from listening to your podcast that we're homeschooling our kids. We have a bit of time around that when maybe there's the evening or one of our wives could do a bit of the homeschool. It's not a double team effort on the kids. I need to really streamline this whole process. And I don't do video at the moment. I just started recording some interviews but I've been doing that in a studio, and it's kind of me interviewing non-Bitcoiners and just saying to them, why would you not buy Bitcoin? And then we have a conversation around that. So that is coming, and that is nailed, but it's kind of expensive to do that. So in between those episodes, I want to do ones where I just talk like my normal podcast, do it on video. I would like to outsource that to somebody to edit it, and then what the importance is of chopping those things up and using it for socials, like on Nostr and Twitter, X, Instagram, and just what your advice is to someone who's just, I'm effectively just starting out in podcasting, trying to grow it, not trying to make $1 million from sponsorship, but just trying to expand the reach and the connections, like the way that we connected, really.
Okay, so I've spent a lot of time trying to build podcasts. I have yet to be super happy with the outcomes from one as a standalone project. Podcasting is very strange in that to really make good advertising dollars, you need to have a fucking massive audience. And like, it just takes a long, long time to create that. I think that my current iteration will get there, but again, it's just going to take, literally years to do. But the returns for podcasting for me were non-financial in that sense. So it's actually the people I've been able to meet and the skills that I've picked up through the conversations that I've had, and then the decisions I've been able to make. So like Bitcoin with Jake, for example, was 2022 to 2023 and was a critical part of the puzzle for my own levels of conviction. And I did like 80 conversations specifically on Bitcoin, asking people, why are you into it? What did you know that meant that this is the thing that you had to do? And that was like, sell the house, sell the apartments, sell everything you fucking can to buy Bitcoin, because this thing is the most important thing that's happened in the world of business and money in our generation, for sure. So that's like a non-obvious ROI, because that investment decision is now 5 times more valuable.
Yeah.
So that's not a sponsorship contract. That's actually just a different set of decisions that were able to happen because of the podcast. So obviously you want to answer the question, like, why am I doing this? But you wouldn't have got this far already if you didn't have a calling to it. Like from this conversation we're having right now, you're obviously someone who really enjoys meeting people, having a chat, learning about them, teaching what happened for yourself that went badly or what went well.
Yeah.
And so that's the raw ingredients. It's basically just someone who's willing to get out there, put themselves out there. What I've done to produce podcasts over the last 4 or 5 years has changed a lot. And that's largely to do with resourcing, really. So either I was working under my own steam or I was working within like startup businesses. And what I did was I essentially started hiring a contractor, someone to help as a producer. And maybe the best thing to do is talk through what I do now. So
yeah,
I have a Notion page that is like my CRM, essentially. It's like, okay, I've got a list of names that are people that I would like to have on the podcast, or people that contact me like yourself that would like, can we chat? Or actually, you contacted me asking me about the podcast. You didn't invite yourself. And I said, actually, would you like to come on as a guest?
Yeah, I was just saying, love the podcast. I think we ranked.
You were saying
near each other.
How do we do this or something?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was like,
how does it work? Yeah, and that's great. I love that. Like, that's the whole point, right? It's an invitation to have people reach out to you. And so I have a document essentially that I keep fairly well up to date as to like who's going to come on. So it's like a guest management system, and they are. I mean, it's a custom Notion sheet that I've built where you've got these little tabs, and you can turn the tabs into a table. Do you know the software Notion? Have you ever used that before?
Well, it's not big in the plumbing world, so I'm not like not that familiar.
Yeah,
with
yeah. Okay, fair enough. So it's basically just it's a website that you can download and use on your computer.
Okay.
You could do the same thing in a Google Sheet if you really wanted. But like first and foremost is like who the hell are you going to have on the show?
Okay.
If you're doing guests, if you're just doing yourself, that's obviously a different matter altogether. But my podcasts have always been focused on long form, one-on-one conversation. And then you have to obviously contact them and book in a time. I currently use a Calendly booking link. So like there's predefined times to chime in on the homeschooling thing. So it's now 9:00 at night with me. I sit down at 8 p.m. on weeknights and record podcasts. And that works well because the kids are all asleep. Mine are all under 5 years old, or Ruby just turned 5. Okay. But from 5 a.m. till 7:30 all day, there's shit to do with them. So it's not easy necessarily to schedule time consistently, especially when traveling, being like, Tuesday's 10 a.m. podcast recording. It's like, we don't even know where we're going to be, mate. Yeah, and that might just be like you're on a plane or on a ferry, or like the baby's sick. It's like that's really difficult to do. Yeah. So in some ways that narrows down who you can talk to, but it's actually quite fun because actually if you change time zones, it forces you to change. It's like, okay, well that person wouldn't fit during them, but now they might. So my job currently is obviously hosting the conversation. We're using Riverside now, which I recommend to people all the time. Calendly booking, as you saw, pops up in the calendar itself. Click this link, on you come. And then once I've ended this podcast tonight, the link can be shared it will go to, I have Pat is an editor and previously was also like just the full stack producer. But when I started this podcast, I got involved with a guy called Michael, who I met through Bitcoin Mentor, and is also producer for Robert Breedlove's What is Money show. And so I was like, it'd be really cool to combine Pat with someone who's actually seen how a large scale podcast actually functions. And so Pat and Michael are working together, which is going really well. And so in theory, I don't have to touch anything at all from the moment I stop recording and share the recording link to when it's published. And they are both able to deal with everything. So I was actually thinking what we would do as a podcast episode towards the end of this year with all three of us, and we'd do a workflow of how we produce an entire episode, and we'll put it up as an episode. And I'm actually going to do it as a kind of advertising promotion. So it's like, this is what you get if you were to advertise with us, and this is the workflow and meet the team and whatever. I think it'd be a really fun piece of content to make.
Yeah, that would be good. Yeah. Do you think that what would your advice to me be? Quickly outsource all the editing and the uploading?
I would keep it. The advantage of starting is no one's looking. So just don't overthink it. Whatever works to get the episode out there, just do it. Like when I first started posting Bitcoin with Jake episodes, shout out to Knut Svanholm, who was my first guest. I had a Zoom account. I clicked record on the Zoom account. I stopped recording on the Zoom account. And I was so shit at GarageBand that I was able to literally like chop off the first 5 seconds and chop off the last 5 seconds. Yeah. And I posted it on what at the time was a website called Anchor, which was a RSS hosting platform, which is now Spotify for podcasters. Yeah. And that was my first podcast episode, like zero editing. I wrote the show notes myself. And it was really just a case of just start putting stuff out there. And like what you have mentioned, I was audio only for probably 6 months, purely because I was like procrastinating about like, what do I want as my background and like what's actually going to work as a video. And I've become far less conscious of like the imagery. This podcast, I did spend a bit of money on branding and building my website, because that for me was a really important, like, I'm doing it properly for myself alone, and it's my capital that I'm putting on the table, and I want to do it well at the start. But for you, it'd be very simple. Just like keep it simple, chuck stuff out there.
Okay.
So in theory, I could do everything Pat's doing, and I could do everything Michael's doing myself because I did it before.
Yes.
I'm just really bad at it, and I don't like doing it.
Okay.
What I do like doing is listening to other guests, researching people, researching Bitcoin, inviting them on a call. I do it all myself because I feel like that's a more like hospitable way of hosting a conversation. Like it's not like a PA saying, "Would you like to meet Jake on a phone call?" It's like, no, I want to talk to you. Can you join me? So I'm going to carry on doing that as long as possible. Advice would be basically like you're kicking all the goals you need to, which is you've got a name, you've got an area you want to focus on, and you started putting stuff up. Like most people don't even get that far.
So do you think video is important? Like, are the numbers on video better? Because I don't get it. I only listen to podcasts, audio podcasts. I don't watch any podcasts really. So then that bias then feeds into what I do because I think who watches videos and podcasts? Who's got time to do that? But I think a lot of people do. And is YouTube really important for the podcast growth and the numbers bigger on YouTube?
Well, so I did another episode recently that was about the 6 months milestone that we hit. And
yes, I listened to that. I don't know if you saw that. Yeah, I did. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so that was on YouTube, so you could have watched it too. Twitter and YouTube are neck and neck at about 50,000 views each, and so that's all video.
Okay.
Yeah. Like the problem with just posting on the RSS feeds, i.e., if you just do Spotify for podcasters, there's no algorithm helping you get that content to new eyes or new ears.
Okay.
What do I mean by that? So a podcast, in my mind, is 3 phases. You've got the production, the publishing, and then the promotion. And so the production will be scheduling the guest, recording the conversation, chopping up the conversation to remove any, like, the car horns outside and whatever, preparing all the show notes. And then you've got to upload it to all the different places that you're going to publish it. So if you're doing it on YouTube for video or Rumble, you're also going to then put it onto your Spotify for podcasters for RSS feeds into iTunes and Spotify, Fountain. Interestingly, 60-70% of my listens via RSS feed since launch are on Fountain.
Yeah,
it's a massive stat. Like that's iTunes is absolutely nowhere. And so that's like the publishing angle. It's like, how are you going to distribute this thing as a full episode? And then the final part is then promotion. And then you've got obviously all the different social platforms that you can do that to. But like X and YouTube, you can put full episodes on, but then you can post lots of clips. You can now do shorts, Instagram, TikTok. There's all these different areas that you can use to try and get people's attention. As a one-man band, spending time with your wife and kids traveling, you couldn't do it all.
Yeah.
Very simple. So I wouldn't stress out about doing all that stuff. The key is just to be out there batting. And in my mind, at least, like putting your name out there, because it's a long, if you do it for a long time, you've got plenty of time to figure all this stuff out. So I wouldn't be over complicating it, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. I think the thing I want to do is I can handle audio editing. I think video editing, I'm like, I'm going to have to learn how to do that. And I don't know if I want to I feel like I want to just outsource the video. Don't mind doing the uploads and stuff if I like to check it out before, but I think probably finding someone to edit the video who can pretty much, I don't know how to do that workflow really. Do you find someone on Fiverr? Do you try and like connect with someone on Noster?
Yeah.
That's probably the thing I need to do next.
Well, and there's a website called Bitcoin Jobs as well that you could put an ad on.
Oh yeah.
And equally, the easiest thing might be I'll just introduce you to Pat. Okay. So he now has a small podcast publishing business that he helps people create their podcasts.
Mate.
And we started working together about halfway through creating Bitcoin with Jake. So I've known Pat now for a good couple of years. Hung out in person a few times in Australia and in Bali as well. So yeah, he's an awesome guy and would definitely help you out. So that would be my first port of call. And it's especially someone like, because he's been sitting behind me, helping me do all this content for the last few years. Like he really knows what he's doing.
Yes.
And would be a great person to just chuck some ideas around with as well. So yeah, that would be my first port of call, is to introduce you to him. So that's very easily done.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. What would be, and have you set like targets? Like, why are you doing it?
Well, no, I haven't really set any targets. The main why is because I've ended my business. I probably want to do something else one day, and it's probably the thing that I want to move into. Not necessarily podcasting for the next 20 years, but what's the work I'm going to move into, and what's so lonely. My life I've been like the loneliest Bitcoiner forever, right? So I literally didn't know anyone. I know one friend, Ash, and then there's one guy I met at a church who we talked about Bitcoin. I said, you know about Bitcoin? He said, yeah, I've had it for ages.
No way.
And until we came traveling and I got the Orange Pill app and met a single other Bitcoiner in real life, right? And when I started doing the podcast, suddenly I got an X account and started messaging some other people. And then all of a sudden I've got this whole world of people who are into Bitcoin. So for me, it's really connecting with other people and trying to get into an ecosystem where there are cool people who I connect with and like, and potentially will either spark my ideas around a new business that I could start in this kind of ecosystem, or just going to meetups, going to conferences now and just start to meet the people that we speak to on our podcast or speak to on X, and then think, okay, these are some people that I could work with, or I think that's probably where I would like to take it one day. I think is that it's really a means for connection and building relationship that I've never really engaged with internet connections before, because my work has been so real life and hands-on that I thought doesn't it's not relevant for me. But the Bitcoin thing is, and I think that's probably it. Trying to connect with lots of people. And,
awesome.
Meet some cool guys.
Well, I mean, I have had the experience over the last few years because of the podcast. So business opportunities, investment opportunities, being an MC of a conference, like I did that in Bali, I've done it in Australia. It's like, I would never have guessed that would ever happen. And then suddenly you're doing it. You're like, well, I'm the guy that's going to, what?
Yeah.
All right, fuck it, let's go,
Yeah. I mean,
and then you realize you can do it. And then it becomes good fun. And you're like, cool. Well, that was actually pretty easy.
Yeah. I think that's it. I can't realize,
even though it's like very daunting.
I feel like I can kind of like chat about Bitcoin, talk to people, smile nicely. I don't know, just do the kind of internet personality thing without being a dick. And if things come up, I'm like, great, this is the world I want to be in anyway. So if I meet new people and do interesting stuff, that's a win.
Yeah. Well, and I'm sure they will. Like it's about, in my mind at least, like just be authentic, i.e. true to yourself, ask the questions you want to know the answers to, and things start happening, even though you don't force it, if that makes sense. Yeah. One thing that's come to mind, Myles, how long are you going to be staying in Asia and traveling for?
We're just here for a couple more weeks, actually.
Okay.
Yeah, in a few weeks. We're going back to the UK for August, basically. Stay around the UK for a bit, have a little Cornwall holiday, and then in September, I don't know what we're going to do. Carry on homeschooling, and then see where kind of the wind takes us, I guess.
And would you? Well, how old are your kids? You don't have to say, but
10-year-old.
To share.
Yeah, no, we don't post about them. But I'm talking about them. But 10-year-old, 8-year-old, and 6-year-old, boy, girl, boy.
Awesome. Yeah. Awesome. Okay, so you're like 5 years ahead of me in a sense. So a homeschooling day for you, we'll wrap it off after this question. But what does a homeschooling day look like for you guys, and why did you want to do it?
I realised that school is not setting our kids up for what the world is going to be like when they enter the world. I mentioned I had an AI podcast before the Bitcoin podcast, and it was rubbish. I didn't know what I was talking about, and I was a total amateur in the professional world. Whereas with the Bitcoin one, I feel like at least I know a bit about Bitcoin, and I know what I've got some experience to talk about. But the only benefit of the AI podcast is I learned so much, and the main thing that stuck with me is jobs are going to change drastically, but I don't think anyone knows how. And I for sure know that our schools are not preparing our children for a world that is where AI takes over a vast majority of jobs. People say in the next 4 years or 5 years, that's the world's going to change. For sure, in the next 15 years, the world is going to drastically change. And that is what's been pushing us to think we should just homeschool our kids, because I don't think some of the things our schools are teaching are going to be relevant for them. I think being relatable, social skills, being able to understand business, being able to understand basically just the basic things like math, writing, reading, being engaged and socially active. I think all those things are going to be much more important. And I just felt that when we're in the school system, we don't have the energy to do extracurricular things. It sounds weird, doesn't it? Because we should have more time to do things when the kids are being looked after by the state all day, most days. But actually, once you get near the end of the day, you get near kids' dinner time, the day's kind of over anyway, and you can't really do anything. But when you have the whole day, you can plan to do really fun stuff, you can plan to do interesting things. And probably the main benefit so far of homeschooling the kids is that our oldest two kids started reading amazingly. Like they suddenly their reading just accelerated to like another level. Whereas they were reading real children's books before, now they're reading like Lord of the Rings and Little House on the Prairie, like proper actual books. And for me, I just think if they are interested in reading, they can learn anything they want. And I actually just love being with the kids as well. I just really enjoy being around them. And my oldest boy,
which is what you're supposed to be.
I know.
Hello, what a surprise! The dad spending time with their kids,
I know. My oldest boy is sort of halfway through filming. We're very low screen actually. We don't use any devices really. But my oldest boy is filming a Rubik's Cube course. And I know, I'm told him, by the way, there's thousands of those videos for free on the internet, but he's got this idea where he can solve the Rubik's Cube.
Doesn't matter.
No, it doesn't matter. Thousands of them are around, but he can solve it quite quickly, and I can't do it. So I was like, if you can teach me how to do it, he's taught me half of it, and you can film that with the camera, like looking down like that. I said, you might be able to put it on the internet, some people will buy that from you. So he's like, okay, I could teach some kids at school, after school. I'm like, no, forget that. There are millions of people on the internet. There's only 30 people in your class at school. And even that bit of education for him, we would not have had time to do that when we were working and not doing homeschool.
Yeah, wow. One of the things that, when I hear you talking like that, it's so fucking powerful. This idea of like, it's still very, very uncommon in my opinion, but a husband and wife with multiple children making a big decision, which is we don't want to put our children in this environment over here. We now feel financially confident enough and independent enough to take control of it ourselves. And the children that are going to come out of that experience, like they're going to change the fucking world. And that's one of the reasons that makes me so excited, because what skills do you need in life? Well, you need to be able to how to talk to people. Like that's pretty much the most fundamental thing. You don't need to understand how to sit in the same school clothes as everyone else in a room listening to some fat robot talk for 45 minutes about a subject that you don't care about.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just mental. And you're absolutely right. What is the point of regurgitating information from a textbook in a timed environment, writing, when you can type into Grok the same thing and get it back in 3 seconds? Like, that's not useful.
What sent me over the edge with their school is my oldest boy's handwriting was terrible, right? They were like, he has to do joined up writing. But as soon as he does his SATs in year 5, he doesn't have to do joined up writing anymore. He can just do non-joined up writing. It's like, sorry, I don't understand. And the teacher was trying to explain to me again. And actually, he explained it over again. And I just said, no, I actually don't think you're going to be able to explain it in a way that I understand, because you're chatting so much shit that he doesn't. So what his handwriting needs to improve. But you're saying in 6 months' time, he doesn't have to do joined up writing. So yeah, I was like, we are out of here. Like, we're gone. Like, that makes no sense whatsoever. Why putting pressure on him to do that? And now his handwriting is lovely. As soon as we started homeschooling, I was like, you don't have to do joined up handwriting anymore. And he was like, so happy. And his handwriting's fine now. But also, who cares? Like, as long as he can write a letter to his future girlfriend when he's in his teens or whatever, or he write a birthday card to someone. I can't, I very rarely use a pen myself now. Even when I was running the business, I hardly used a pen. But what's the point? What's the point for some of the things? It's kind of set up for an pre-industrialization age schooling, right? To sit in chairs and create citizens that will go and sit in offices. And I just don't think, my kids are not like really unruly or really wild or anything. They're just kind of normal. But I don't reckon they'll be up for working in an office. I think that's not their vibe. It's not my vibe. And I think that homeschooling just sets them up for like a much broader understanding of the world as well.
Well, and it's this concept. We'll leave it here. But this is the key question, I think, as fathers, that we have to answer, which is, what does the optimal 25-year-old actually look like? And then work backwards from there. And I still haven't sat down and truly done that as an exercise, but more just like thought through it. And the optimal 25-year-old is someone who's like basically like fit in the mind, fit physically, and willing and able to create far more value than they consume. And that's it. Like, it's not about having a specific title or a specific qualification, or if you've got the basic ingredients to go out there and like solve people's problems, that's all you need. And the playing field that they have when they're 25 is completely unpredictable. So in 20 years' time, my eldest daughter's 25. I have no idea what she's going to be dealing with and what problems people are going to have. You just don't know. But if you have the basics of communication and arithmetic, then you're basically done. And schools don't even teach that.
No. And I'm going to have a small Bitcoin stack for them as well. So by the time they're 25, I'll be like, look, you can go buy a house with that, you can go start a business with that. And hopefully, I think the other thing I'd add to your list is that they would be prepped and ready to be a fantastic life partner, marriage partner for their future wife or future husband. Okay. So that, I would sort of say it's really important to be a solid guy or like mentally well woman and just ready to meet the person that you want to be with. Because I got married when I was quite young. It sounds like you may have done as well. That that's the best decision I ever made. It's so good. I mean, my life only got better after I met my wife, and I wasn't really that ready to get married. If I'd been a bit more prepped, I probably could have been, first couple of years of marriage could have been a bit smoother.
That's a great point to add. And actually, hence the question, what does the optimal 25-year-old need some more time spent on it? But well, Myles, listen, it's been awesome to spend some time with you, and to recycle back to the very start. I'm so humbled that you took the time to listen to my previous podcast and that we're now having this conversation today.
Yeah.
You just do not know who's out there listening. And I know that I take inspiration from lots of other podcasts and make decisions as a result of them. And those people will never know, in some ways, how much value I've created as a result of the information they shared in those conversations. So it's really incredibly cool to end up in a conversation like this. So thank you so much for taking the time to reach out and joining today.
Jake, mate, thank you. Your content's had a big impact on my life and probably a big impact on my net worth as well. So I'm super grateful. I don't think I would be on this trip if it wasn't in part because of your content.
Awesome. Oh, I love to hear that. Well, have an incredible rest of your time. If people wanted to get in touch, Myles, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah. Twitter, I guess X is probably the easiest, or the website, bitcoin4everyone.uk. Podcast Bitcoin for Everyone. Yeah, if you Google it or search for it for a bit, it might not be top of the Google results. You'll find it eventually.
Well, mate, thank you so much for joining.
That's cool. See you, Jake.